My name is Patricia Kathleen, and this podcast series will contain interviews I conduct with women, female identified, and non binary individuals regarding their professional stories and personal narrative as it relates to their perspective. This podcast is designed to hold a space for all individuals to learn from their counterparts, regardless of age, status, or industry. We intend to transparently investigate the evolving global dialogue regarding underrepresented figures in all industries across the USA and abroad. By hosting these stories and conversations, we aim to contribute to the changing platform and representation of these individuals for the future. Now let's start the conversation. Hi everyone, and welcome back. I'm your host, Patricia, and today I am sitting down with Makini Smith. Makini is the founder and author of A Walk in My Stilettos. You can find out more on her website, awalkinmystilettos.com. Welcome, Makini.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Patricia.
Absolutely. I look forward to unpacking everything that you do, your personal story and the tie into the brand and the services that you offer, as well as your book. I think our story, we were talking in before production, and I think that they are so powerful. We just can't hear stories like this enough. And I really look forward to unpacking it.
Excited.
Yeah. For everyone listening, I'm going to read a bio on Makini, but before I do that, a quick roadmap of today's podcast. We will first look at Makini's academic background and early professional life to kind of garner a platform in which she's coming from. And then we'll start unpacking A Walk in My Stilettos separately, the website separately from the book that she has written, the website, all of the services that she offers and the areas of expertise that she coaches and kind of offers advice and tutorship through. Then we'll unpack the book, what it's about, the journey, and all of those things that I'm not going to relinquish here because it will tie in. We'll turn everything towards looking at goals that Makini may have for the next 1 to 3 years regarding both personal and her business as they intertwine with one another. We'll wrap everything up with advice that Makini may have for those of you who are looking to get involved or emulate some of her success. A quick bio on Makini before we get started. Founder of A Walk in My Stilettos, Makini Smith is an award-winning entrepreneur. She has successfully crafted a business in personal development as a mindset coach, helping women reach their goals, a certified Proctor Gallagher consultant for her mentor, Bob Proctor, and 4-time published author. Her first book is titled A Walk in My Stilettos, How to Get Through the Struggle with Grace, with the foreword written by Linda Proctor, wife of Bob Proctor. Her second book, A Walk in My Stilettos, 111, so 111, depending on how we're going to do that, 111 affirmations to help you heal, was inspired by the encouragement of her readers. Makini created her third book, A Walk in My Stilettos, The Gratitude Journal, to share her success tools with other women, which was followed by the Couples Gratitude Journal, inspired by her relationship with her partner. She is also the host of the 5 stars rated A Walk in My Stilettos podcast for women looking for the tools and motivation to conquer their fears, own their story, and uncover the potential hidden within. Her passion to improve the quality of people's lives includes making an impact, in which she contributes her time spreading awareness of mindset, providing expertise on media platforms globally. She's been seen on Huffington Post, EXO, Nicole, BET, NBC, CBS, Vice News, and much more. Makini does more than talk the talk. She walks the walk by being an example of leadership, serving in the community, including her recent run for a member of provincial parliament in the 2018 Canadian election, which is so exciting. I can't wait to climb through. I think you might be my first political candidate on the show thus far, and it's really fun, Makini. I can't wait to look at that. Before I start getting into all of your endeavors and really unpacking your story and your brand and all of your services, I'm hoping you can draw us an academic background and early professional life roadmap that kind of led you to where you are now.
Absolutely. I mean, elementary school up until grade 8, I was that kid who was obsessed with learning and getting excellent grades. So graduating with honors, my marks were up in the 80s and 90s, and going into high school, again, I guess I didn't necessarily, let's say I hung around a group of people that weren't really into going to class on time and being in class every day, but I was always that girl like, sorry guys, I'll be back, I'm going to class.
Mhm.
And I ended up graduating from high school with honors. And then going into college, I actually went to college for aesthetics and spa management. I wanted to open my own spa and run a business that way. And I was really into just helping people feel good, and graduated from college with honors. And then when I left college and I became a mom, I had a few kids and decided that that wasn't necessarily the route that I was going to take. When I walked away from aesthetics, I got into real estate and I went to real estate college here in Canada. And I sold real estate full time for 6 years. And at that point, I was a single mom. So being able to manage the business, manage the three kids was a handful. And it kind of became exhausting and took a toll on my health. And I guess in my path to growth, after my sister passed away and after my divorce, and I got into understanding personal development, I became obsessed with it and realized like everybody needs to know this. This is life-changing information.
Yeah.
And that's why I ended up taking the training through Bob Proctor's company, Proctor and Gallagher, to be a consultant as a mindset coach and help people in the personal development world.
Yeah, I love that. And it slides right in. I love that your academic and professional background really slides right into unpacking, what you do with A Walk in My Stilettos. So I really do want to turn just straight to that journey. The first book, the one that I have read, I have not read the other three, but I look forward to them. It talks about your personal journey, and it really ties in how you became the self-realized and actualized person you are today. And I'm assuming how you've rendered the skills necessary to apply them to your customer. And so I'm hoping we can first unpack that book a little bit. Can you proffer up like an example or synopsis for you about what's entailed with that and how that speaks to your personal brand as it is today?
Absolutely. So the first book, A Walk in My Stilettos, How to Get Through the Struggle with Grace, it started out as me just wanting to share my story. And I had, after my sister passed away and after my divorce, I was going through support groups to help me get through the grieving process.
Mm.
And in that, as much as I was there to share and to learn and to heal, I was helping other people heal through those sessions. It was sharing my positivity, sharing the fact that I was still grateful, sharing my ability to be resilient. And everyone in those groups was like, wow, that's so inspiring. You should write a book. So instead of sharing my story one to one, I was able to share it one to many by putting it into that book. And it's just my story with the tips and tools that helped me get through. And it includes scripture, but it has, I guess, where it can relate to everyone, because we all have struggle. None of us are exempt from struggle, but
Mhm.
it's how to get through those things gracefully.
Yeah, and what I like about it is when you mention faith a lot in the book, it isn't specific, and so it really is non-denominational, attached. I think that people of all walks, even agnostic and atheists, faith is not something that is strictly beholden to one faith.
Right.
It's this concept, and I think it's been a unifying factor recently in COVID-19 pandemic because a lot of people have had to really come together with faith and hope, about humanity, about being able to solve these things, about being able to save populations that are at risk. And so those words, I think, get attached a lot to specific things. But your book did a very good job, at least for me. And I'm sure that you and I don't share the same faith. I'm a Tibetan Buddhist, but it didn't, the way you used the term, and I don't know if you did that consciously, but you do talk about faith because it's been a guiding principle in your life, and it's brought about these revelations for you and the way that you approach life now. Are you aware that you don't necessarily attach it strictly to a specific denomination or religion? And did you do that on purpose?
I guess that's really how I think of faith. So, because I grew up around people of different cultures, different denominations, understanding that faith is really just the belief in the unknown. we don't necessarily have to be religious to understand each other's faith. Like you said, it's not necessarily one denomination. So being close to people, and even having people within my family that have different belief practices and faith, whether it be being Muslim, whether it be Buddhist, whatever it is, we have guiding principles that allow us to have hope, guiding principles that allow us to want to be good people, guiding principles that allow us to want to serve and to be better. And although when I talk about faith, although I may attend a Christian church, understanding that in my mind, actual religion divides us, but talking about faith and hope brings us together. So yeah, people know that when it comes to faith, my guiding principle is God, and I do believe in God, but I don't I don't judge anyone else for their religious beliefs. I don't challenge anyone else on their religious beliefs. It's just understanding that faith and hope do keep us together and connect us.
I completely agree. And you can have faith in oneself. You know, I love the definition that you just offered up about is having, confidence in the unknown, and to be an entrepreneur, to be the underdog, to be the other, to be a woman, to be a person of color. You exercise faith or you die, I would argue, in this world on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think it's a unifying factor. I'm wondering, the timeline is something I'm a little foggy on. I know that you've had this relationship with Bob Proctor and his wife. She wrote the foreword, as we mentioned, for your book. And you talked briefly on a recent podcast of yours, about the story of meeting him and the auspiciousness and how it kind of all tied into, you were just taking this leap of faith and it was a little nerve-wracking. And I'm wondering how that ties into your growth and when you finally wrote the book and things like the certification of becoming a coach and writing the book. Did the book come first or vice versa?
So yeah, that's definitely an interesting story. So the book came before the certification. So I had gone through my divorce and my sister had passed away. And like I said, through my grieving process, and I was getting support and understanding personal development so that I could heal. And I had a woman that I had met here in Toronto that had a sisterhood, and that sisterhood was featured on Oprah Life Class. And in my, I guess, connection with her, when she was starting her leadership academy, it forced me to dig deep into my inner insecurities, the things that were holding me back. And that made me even more interested in understanding personal development. And I had another friend of mine who had forced me to watch the movie The Secret, the documentary, back when I was going through my divorce, but I wasn't ready for it back then. So that brought up, I guess, more interest in Bob Proctor and the whole, being a thought leader and helping other people tap into their potential. And as the universe would have it, I was actually doing a real estate deal and got a complete random phone call from a stranger who was following me on Twitter and was inviting me to meet Bob Proctor. And I had actually been looking into his courses. He had a 3-day, I think it's the Matrix course at the time, was like $12,000. And I thought, wow, he's inviting me to meet Bob Proctor for free. What is the catch? This has to be a hoax. Mm-hmm. And I actually attended and connected with Bob and his wife. It was a beautiful experience for me, but it was life-changing. And staying connected with them and being mentored by them and learning from them, I was actually in the process of writing the book. So when I got the nerve to actually ask Linda if she would read it and write the foreword, when she said absolutely, that was mind-blowing to me. And she read it while her and Bob were away for a week. And I believe they were in Hawaii. And I went to meet them the week they came back, and Bob was first one to approach me and say, wow, like, that your book is amazing. I don't like your cover, but your book is amazing. And
everyone's a critic.
Yes. But it was a beautiful experience. And after having the book out and going through, doing book signings and meeting people and having people ask me to mentor them, I was like, wow, okay, people actually see me as a mentor. It was like an evolution process for me. And when Bob made a call saying he's looking for more consultants and he thinks that I would be a great consultant, I was like, if Bob Proctor thinks so. So I ended up taking the course, and that's led me to where I am now, helping other people tap into their potential.
Yeah, and let's unpack that a little bit. When you hit your website, it's I have to say, from a nerd standpoint of view, everyone, my audience, anyone who's heard more than 3 of these podcasts knows that I am married to an original Silicon Valley computer nerd that came up when the Valley was being built. So I care deeply about things I should not care about, for all respects. But I have to say, on the front, just to put it out there, your website's really clean. I like the layout.
Thank you.
It's very concise. And that's kind of important because of this reason for me. For my own personal taste, I need my coaches, my advisors, my therapists, and my mentors, I need them to have clarity. I have to believe that they have clarity, because otherwise, how are they going to bring it to me? And so when your
Right.
website is presenting me with clarity, I immediately begin to think that you're, you know, potentially an advisor I would look at. And so that's key, because I think that that speaks
Thank
to
you.
the marketing understanding and just the consistency throughout your brand. Now, when I
Thank you.
first came onto it, I'll tell the audience, everyone needs to get on and experience this for yourself, because I've just told you that it's beautiful and you should go and see beautiful website design. But it's a walkinmystilettos.com. And when you get on, one of the first things that you can find is the immediate assistance and aid areas that Makini will offer. So it's mentorship subscription, virtual podcast packages, consultations, storytelling strategy sessions, podcast strategy sessions, self-publishing sessions. So I started to see a theme throughout all of these. And I like how you parsed out specific things and just saying podcasting, I'll advise you on that. Like, there are different areas that you're like, I will speak to this because it's a little bit more clear. And then you have a free 15-minute call, which is awesome. I think everyone should always do that. However, I want to kind of unpack a little bit of what each does, so we can start to form a narrative around the aspect that you're bringing to each one. So the mentorship subscription, I'm assuming this is like a rolling subscription from 1 month to the
Yes.
next.
So monthly or biweekly.
Okay. And what are the key areas, if you had to kind of summarize between all of your clients, what are the main things you've been advising just based on what their needs have been?
So there's a lot of people who have, so first of all, there's a lot of people who don't have goals. So it's getting people to be very clear about what their goals are in their personal life and their business life. And
Yeah.
then getting people to actually set, I'm going to say, we call them C goals, but they're like goals that scare you, goals that stretch you, goals that, and showing you how to attain them the same way that 7-figure business owners or elite athletes would attain those goals, getting you to clear up the fog in your head, especially when it comes to self-image, because how we see ourselves on the inside affects the opportunities and the things that we go after and how we act on the outside.
Yeah.
Working on all of those things, basically.
Okay. And then would you say that most of your clients in this area stay for 1 month, 6 months? Do you have an average, or is it just based on individual all across the board?
So it's usually based on the individual. I expect people to commit for a minimum 3 months, because the only way to see your results is consistency, and learning through consistency is a huge part of what we do, repetition. And there's different sessions, but if they choose to, and we're going through the Bob Proctor sessions, there's a 12-session course on how the brain works and going through your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, and why we actually do the things that we do so that we can get the results that we want to get.
Yeah. Okay. And so it sounds like you do have a framework. I always wonder how people do, this coaching, if they come at, do you present that framework to people that you advise, like with the goal making? Do you say, like, this is what the paradigm we're going to be working in, and this is what it's going to yield?
Yeah. So on a consultation call, if someone calls me for mentorship and coaching, my first question is, where are you and where do you want to be? And I break down, using the systems that we have, how those systems can actually help them get to where they want to go.
Right. Okay. And then getting into the virtual podcast package. And I want to talk about that and how it's differentiated between the podcast strategy session.
Okay. Yeah. So for the virtual podcast session, I was doing, well, before COVID, we were doing them in person, but I found that everyone is at a complete different point in terms of understanding. So you reference yourself as like a nerd. So there are some people that understand technology. So when you're teaching them technical stuff, they get it very quickly. But there are people who want to produce a podcast that have no clue.
Yeah.
So I found that in person, those sessions were taking a little bit longer. So I actually do custom one-on-one sessions now. So what people are paying for is the personalization. So we do virtual sessions, and I walk them through start to finish, everything that I know about podcasting, but helping them to come up with their concept, their format, helping them to work through getting their cover art, and how to market, and what their objective and goal is with sharing their story with the world through a podcast.
Nice. Yeah.
And then the strategy, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, particularly to this standpoint, I get reached out to myself and my company maybe 16 times a day about people who are just looking for really earnest, like, pieces of advice, because I host 5 separate podcasts and I co-host 2 others. It's this, people reach out and say, like, how do I just, like, start? Like, what software am I using? What am I doing this? And so it's key to be able to point towards, it's the number one booming form of, like, communications and marketing. It's still the Wild West. It's still very, like, anybody's game, no rules out there, nobody knows.
Yeah.
And so it's really key. I think that kind of a service is going to blow up, over the next year. So I think that's really cool. Okay. You were saying now, and differentiating it from the podcast strategy session.
Yeah, from the strategy session, there are people that may have already started a podcast, but they want to know something as simple as, how do I monetize it? How do I get sponsors? How do I do, like, all of those individual things? It's coaching them through that based on their individual needs. So the strategy session, it's basically a 1-hour consultation on podcasting specific to what they need to know. Because the masterclass, the online virtual workshop, it's like 3, I'm going to say 3.5 if it's someone who's a little slower, but it's 3.5 hours of a session, going through every single thing from starting, recording, editing, marketing. It's the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, it's a totally different step. And it's really cool that you parse those out, because combining them is too much anyway. Getting your feet wet and starting a podcast is a very different beast than getting into sponsorship, partnerships, affiliation, all of the advertising. It's just incredible. I myself lived for a year in it before I even reached out into those areas, just because I wanted to really garner a sense of the world I was in. And so I think that it's wise to parse those out. I'm wondering now about the storytelling strategy session. That's fascinating. And before you say anything, I want to know which mediums you cover with that, because storytelling is, I was raised on it. It's my main form of learning. I believe in it in a pedagogical lens. I think it's at once artistic and biographical. And I'm wondering which mediums you started from and what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the storytelling session, again, that's more like a 1-hour consultation. In terms of storytelling, I have, like you said, you get tons of requests from people that want to know how you do what you do. So I get tons of requests from people wanting to know about becoming an author, how to write, where do they start, what do they do? I get tons of requests on, okay, well, I have a podcast, but I'm not really sure how to share my story on the podcast or to share my message on the podcast. So whether it be through content for social media, especially because, for example, Instagram, there's a lot of people who want to start a personal brand, but they don't know how to connect with their audience. It's using your story to connect with your audience. So I'm basically showing them how to own their story in that 1-hour session, whether it be for content creation for social media, for newsletters, for books, podcasts.
Nice. Yeah, the motive changes, right? It's different. Everyone thinks, well, it's a personal narrative. It goes across all platforms the same, but posting a YouTube, video or something like that with a personal narrative to try and garner an audienceship, as opposed to a blog, as opposed to a podcast. For me, all have a very different dynamic, a different structure, the hook, what you're going to lead with, all of those things, traditional journalism, there's all these HuffPost, submissions, things of that nature. They all have a very different format. And it's ideal to be able to sit down and talk with someone about your ideal formats and what area you want to submit first. I can see the benefit in that. The self-publishing, let's get into that again. A lot of arenas there, right? Ebooks, as opposed to finding a publisher, all of those things. What do you cover in that?
Yes. So for the self-publishing package, because I was working with a lot of content, a lot of ghostwriters behind the scenes, and I was doing on the publishing end. So one of my main ghostwriters is actually a celebrity ghostwriter. So she gets these big contracts to write books for whether it be TV personalities or social influencers, or we've had some musical artists, things like that. It's publishing it on the back end. So I do all of the behind the scenes work into getting their manuscript up on all the global platforms, whether it be hardcover, paperback, or ebook. So I started doing that, and I spent 2019 basically off healing from surgery that kind of didn't heal too well from.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to provide an income for my family by working with the ghostwriters. So coming into 2020, I decided, you know what, there are so many people that want to publish a book, have no idea what to do. And because I can do it with my eyes closed, it's like, okay, if you have a manuscript ready to go, even if you don't, but if you have a manuscript ready to go, it is on the back end. I am setting you up with your ISBN. I'm setting you up with the distributor that has you placed in a catalog of the 39,000 online stores, schools, and libraries. So you're on the big stores like Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, iBooks, all of those. And basically getting everything done within a 2 to 5 week period where they can see their name, on all those big major online bookstores.
Absolutely. Do you do any partnership with publishing houses to that end? Do you have any relationships, or are these all for self-published works?
So all of the work that I've been doing is all for self-published work. So first off, my very first book deal was with the publisher, and that deal went wrong, and I backed out of the contract because it was not in line with my morals and who I was as a person. Mm-hmm. So I took that loss, and that's when I started learning about the self-publishing world and transitioned all of my books to being self-published and learning that route. So on our team that works with the ghostwriters, there is one person on the team that works for a major publisher in the marketing department. So she advises us on the back end with a lot of things, but it's two completely different worlds, working with major publisher versus being self-published. And in the last, I'm going to say 5 years or so, it's actually way more common to be self-published and still build a huge brand and a big name for yourself. So it's helping the everyday woman, person, whoever who wants to share their story internationally to be that author that they always wanted to be if they don't have the funds, or if they don't originally have that huge network or name to be with a major publisher.
Yeah, and I've spoken to a lot of women over the past couple of years that turned to self-publishing after similarly thinking that they were going to get a publisher, getting one, and finding out that the deal was not servicing them. This, I think, I have a suspicion, and I don't have data to back it. I believe it happens to more female authors. And I believe that there's an abuse in the system. I also think that publishing houses need to go through the same scrutiny that the rest of the United States and Canada have gone through in a lot of their regentrification of the literature kingdom. They're acting like these crazy dictators with this draconian control over what gets produced is ridiculous if you think about the release of the World Wide Web, and then putting the stigma upon self-publication as though it's lesser than is absurd to me. And I want a whole nother secondary publishing kingdom to come up where it can be self-publishing and curated at the same time and edited to just kind of, I come from a family of writers, and this old paradigm just feels like, when is that kingdom going to fall? To that end, because I do have a lot of background there, not personally, but through friends and colleagues. I'm wondering, can you enumerate without dropping the name? I know no one wants to get anybody in trouble, but well, maybe you do, but I never mind that. But I'm wondering if you can speak to briefly, a little bit of the difficulty that you had that caused you to back out. Was it a numbers game? Was it an editing game?
With the publisher that I had originally got the book deal with, when I got that deal, it was actually a connection that I made through LinkedIn. And that person advised me that I could submit my manuscript to them. I did. They walked me through how to, do my synopsis. And then when I asked about publishing, that's when they made it clear to me that they actually were connected with the publishing house and name dropped a few names that they had published. So I thought, okay, great. And this was back in 2000 and I'm going to say 2012 roughly.
Okay.
So I didn't do my due diligence back then, but I thought, okay, they dropped some names, they knew what they were doing, let me just go this route. And when I signed that publishing deal, not knowing, so it was thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and I started making my installments and did not have my contract read by a lawyer. Again, I should have. And I guess I started to educate myself as the process was going on. Yeah. And when I submitted my first draft, and it took, I don't know, like 2 months to hear back from their editor, and the person I was connected to with that publishing company came back to me and said, yeah, you've had a rough life, but so what? Like, what do you want us to do with this? And I was like, okay. So if I had just left it there, I never would have published at all. And that's when I started to do more research and realized that within that contract, part of the money that I was paying for, they were basically going to purchase like 2,000 copies of my own book to make me come out as a bestseller, as opposed to me earning that title. To me, I don't agree with that. There was a lot of other things within there. Plus, when it came to, for example, my book cover, if my book is about me, I want some say in the book cover. And I was advised to go and do a photo shoot. And when they came back to me with the book cover, I thought, wow. And back then, I mean, my son is now 14. So back in 2000, I don't want to do all the numbers in my head right now, but back then I thought my son could have done this book cover with his eyes closed. Like, this does not represent me as a brand, as a woman. And I had a very close friend who helps me with some of my design work, who agreed to redo the cover for me. And I had him redo the cover and sent it to the publishing company, and they were totally opposed to it. They ripped it to shreds. Meanwhile, it was an amazing, beautifully designed cover that aligned with who I was. It was just a lot of unnecessary butting of heads. And they did not approve of, so the current book, A Walk in My Stilettos, has a lot of, like you mentioned in the beginning, my faith. That was like a no-no for them. It was basically trying to control my story. And at the end of the day,
isn't it ironic that was the part that reached me? I mean,
that's the part that
they
reached
wanted
most
to
women.
edit out. You know, it's
absolutely
it's ironic. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a lot of butting heads, and it got to a point where I thought, this does not align with who I want to be. So why is it that I'm doing all the work to write my story, and you want to slap this plain Jane cover on it, and then I don't get my royalties, and you're taking, a huge percentage of all of the money that this is going to be making? This doesn't make any sense to me. So I definitely thought that it was worth it to breach that contract and deal with whatever consequences came with it. And I'm glad that I did.
I am too. I'm sure everyone who's read your book is very glad you did. That's a very similar story. And I'm glad that you took the time to, really honestly and authentically give it to us, because I do believe that it's the abuse of writers and people who are out there. And because of it, I like to see this emerging self-publication. And so for you to offer a self-publishing session to be able to help these people along, your own story, it follows a very similar trajectory of a lot of people that I've heard, that it was almost as though they were legally conned in some way and abused for their editorial rights and their story and everything else. And so even stories that don't go that way, the ownership that publishing houses have over you and your work needs to be uncovered before people, particularly women and people who have been considered owned for so much of our historical past, to really understand what you're getting into bed with, and the alternatives to that is, for me, wildly important. So I'm really glad that you shared that. I'm wondering, your story, we grabbed a quote from someone who had a review, and in it says, Makini shares how she conquered the challenges of being a teen mother, divorce, traumatic loss, and becoming an entrepreneur, single motherhood, and much, much more. And your latest book is about this partnership redevelopment that you've had come back into your life. And I don't know how recent or anything like that. And I look at your the story of you, and it's got this really beautiful life cycle, that seems to have come back to this holistic person who's risen, who came up, who fell, maybe not even fell, but stumbled as life would have us all do, and then has come out of it with this sense of not just success, but gratitude and compassion and faith. And I'm wondering if you can speak to, knowing that entire life cycle, as I'm calling it, um, how you use that particular trajectory in looking forward to your future, to your goals that you personally make and you make for your business for the next 1 to 3 years.
Wow. Okay. I mean, there's nothing constant in the world except change.
Yeah.
And I feel like the evolution of my journey, it's funny you say that. I did an Instagram story yesterday asking people why they follow me. And I had one person that I've known since kindergarten basically said she loves watching my evolution and hearing the life lessons that I'm sharing as I go. So as much as I've had these struggles or these things that have happened to me, I do my best to find the lesson or the blessing in everything. And we always feel like when something happens to us, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? And we get upset and like, oh God, why is this happening to me? But learning perspective and saying, okay, well, why is this happening to me? What am I supposed to learn here? Or how is this, or what good can come from this? And my ability, or I guess my perception of life has allowed me to take every single struggle and find the good in it. Like this pandemic, I know a lot of people are upset and anxious and going through all of these waves of emotions. And I'll be honest, yes, I had those in the beginning, but I had to ask myself, what good can come from this? Where is the lesson here? Where am I being blessed in all of this? And I am actually at peace and very content right now in the middle of this pandemic in my home. I mean, I'm introverted, so I don't mind being, at home, but it's more time with my kids. It's more time to focus on my business. It's actually brought me more business because there are more people right now understanding the power of creating content that is valuable and putting our stories out there and writing our own history. And it's allowed me more time to take on more clients. It's allowed me more time to actually be still and study more about personal development and read more books and listen to more podcasts and learn. So it's every time I'm learning something, I am teaching that. And it's like you said, this, I guess, circle of life is, it's just, I am loving and in such a huge place of gratitude for where I am right now, even in this pandemic.
Wonderful. I love that. And I don't think that we should be afraid to talk about the beauty and the lessons that we've learned from the pandemic. I know there's a slight, particularly for people who are philanthropic measured or humanitarianly backed, we don't want to delineate the sorrow and suffering and things like that, but it's crucial for the human spirit to find, the elements that made it worth it to endure,
Right.
and things of that nature. And the global citizenship that brings us all together under this, like, we are freakishly weak and fragile creatures, and we tend to forget that when we create empires, and we have these weaknesses and they combine all of us. And it's not just made out of wars and bullets and things like that. We have it, an imperfect side, and to unite under that and unite under a goal is, for me, so wildly important. And to be reminded of that, I wish the cost hadn't been this, but those types of things. And so I love that, you've kind of looked at this beauty and this love and the areas it's let you. I think a lot of people have taken stock, into what they are personally, career-wise. People have pivoted. It's done a lot of good, and thank goodness, because if it hadn't, this would just be carnage. It would just be horrific, So I'm wondering, we are running out of time and we're wrapping everything up with my favorite part. I must say there's been a lot of favorite parts throughout this particular podcast, but I'm wondering if, so this is the scenario I'd like to present you, and I do it with all of my guests. if you were out tomorrow and there wasn't this social distancing, or let's keep it social distance, if someone reached out to you, a direct message on a social media platform, and this very earnest individual, let's say it was a female identified or non-binary, pretty much anyone other than a cisgendered white man, if they reached out to you and said, listen, I've had this personal journey. It comes from a place of, struggle and triumph in my own right. And I've shared it a lot. People believe that I could help others by sharing it more. I think I'm going to start a coaching business. I'd like to write a book and start these endeavors and really get going. What are the top 3 pieces of advice you would give that person, knowing what you know now?
I love that question. It's funny. I get questions like that every day in my DMs.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the first things that I tell people is there is someone out there willing to pay right now for what you know right now in this very moment. So start with where you are, because there are a lot of people that feel that they have to go pay to get educated to be this or to be that or what have you. Especially when it comes to being a coach, you can coach from your niche of what you know right now in this very moment and evolve from that place, because that's exactly what I did. I was coaching and mentoring before I got certified. So it's knowing that you have value, you have wisdom, and there is someone willing to pay for that specific topic or passion or whatever it is that you want to talk about. The other thing that I would say is get a mentor or a coach, because every great mentor or coach has a mentor or coach. I have different coaches for all areas of my life. I have coaching for leadership. I have coaching for spirituality. I have coaching for business. I have a coach in so many different areas, and they will help you to, I'm going to say, skip some of the pitfalls. They will save you time and money. So that investment that you make into a coach is worth it in time that we can never replace. And the third thing, believe in your story, because your story matters and it is so important. If you don't believe in your story, how are you going to expect other people to believe in your story? If you don't believe that the information that you have is useful and powerful and valuable, how will other people believe that? So having that humble confidence in yourself and to know that your story matters and that you can build an entire brand on your story like I have.
Yeah. And I do agree with that. I've met a lot of really powerful people in advisory roles that are a little bit ashamed of their story still. And I think how and why you've ended up at this beautiful creature. How could you possibly, take anything from your past and hate on it? And I think that believing in your story is part of that, right? It's coming to acceptance.
So powerful.
Absolutely.
Dr. Brene Brown has a quote that says, shame loves secrecy. And I live on that quote because I feel like that's helped me to uncover a lot of the things that other people would be ashamed of, but that's allowed me to evolve and to help people who are in that place that I was in, because they can see someone that's out there as a living example of someone that's not ashamed of having a story that's very similar to theirs.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I could take it even further. I started thinking crime loves secrecy, abuse loves secrecy, everything negative, right, in our life. It's so powerful. It's absolutely true. Secrecy is a powerful component that I think can be used for good and bad when added to something. It's a reactant, if you will, a chemical reactant. So I have the top three pieces to summarize you, if I could be so bold. There is someone out there that's willing to pay for what you know. You have value, so start now. Number 2, get a mentor or coach. And number 3, believe in your story. I love those. Yep. I think that those are so awesome. Thank you, Makini, so much. We're out of time.
You're very welcome, Patricia.
I really appreciate everything. I think your story is awesome. I want everyone to get online, check out your website, your services, and your book. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your show and to have you share my story with your audience. And I truly appreciate you. Thank you.
I appreciate you as well. And thank you. For everyone listening, we've been speaking to Makini Smith. She is the founder and author of A Walk in My Stilettos, You can find it online at awalkinmystilettos.com. And thank you for giving us your time today. Until we speak again, remember to stay safe, stay home until they lift those restrictions, and always bet on yourself. Sláinte.